The Complete Biblical Library was a remarkably ambitious undertaking involving over 500 Bible scholars and researchers. It took over 20 years to produce an exhaustive reference set, unlike any other. The result was a multi-volume library detailing the entire Bible, blending all study tools into one series. Long out of print, the Complete Biblical Library goes for thousands of dollars when found used online. However, we are pleased to announce its release for the Accordance Bible Software Library. The Complete Biblical Library consists of 4 modules in Accordance: the Old Testament Study Bible, the New Testament Study Bible, the Hebrew English Dictionary, and the Greek English Dictionary. There is a forthcoming Greek grammar that's part of the Complete Biblical Library that will be available soon. We should also note that the print copy also included interlinear text as well as a harmony of the Gospels. However, both interlinear features as well as Gospel parallels already appear in Accordance, so we did not choose to incorporate the versions from the Complete Biblical Library at this time. The Complete Biblical Library takes current biblical scholarship seriously, but is also accessible to any person interested in studying the Bible regardless of academic background. Let's use the Book of Psalms for an example of some of the features of the Complete Biblical Library. As we go through the table of contents, we see an introduction, features of the study Bible, overview, and notice that it talks about various versions. I'll show you this in just a moment, but the Complete Biblical Library will use the King James Version as kind of a base translation to compare with other translations of the Bible, and it offers a verse-by-verse commentary. There's discussion of Hebrew translation, literary and biblical standards, an overview of the study helps, as well as transliteration of the Hebrew alphabet along with English equivalents. Now specifically in the volume on the Book of Psalms, you get an overview discussing the background of the book, including discussion of date and author that incorporates scholarly understanding, comparison with literature of the time, and the surrounding culture. There's a discussion of the compilation of the Psalter, since the Psalms consist of 150 compositions. Overview is given of the types of Psalms, aspects of Hebrew poetry, difficulties, problems of translation, and then an overview of technical terms. Notice here these references to HED, that's the Hebrew English Dictionary that is part of the Complete Biblical Library. We'll go into detail of that in just a moment. As you would expect in any good commentary, you get an outline, a summary of the book, and then we get into the commentary itself. Now, in looking specifically at Psalm 1, we have a description here. The theme of the first psalm is the blessedness of keeping the law and is enforced by the juxtaposition of 2 sharply contrasted pictures, one in bright light, another in deep shadow, and each heightening the other. Ebal and Gerizim face one another. The character and fate of the lover of the law are sketched in verses 1 and following, and that of the wicked in verses 4 and following. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. You remember what I mentioned a moment ago. What is in bold is the King James Version. But then there are other translations that are shown, whereas the King James says, "Blessed is the man." The Modern Language Bible, New Berkeley Version, tells us, "Oh, the joys." The Good News Bible says, "Happy are those." Young's translation says, "Oh, the happiness of that one." And notice the other translations that are included here too. The Anchor Bible, Fenton's translation, the Jerusalem Bible, the Knox translation, New Century Version, the Living Bible, the New American Bible, the NIV, and so on. What a great way to compare differences in translations of the Bible all in one place. Now, as we get into the actual commentary of the chapter, we get a discussion here in chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, of the word blessed. Notice here that we have one of these references to the Hebrew English Dictionary. And there's a number here, 869. I get a preview of the Hebrew English Dictionary in the instant details below, or I can click the hyperlink and it opens up to the dictionary. Here in the Hebrew English Dictionary, I have the Hebrew word, I have a transliteration, I have the part of speech, I have various translational forms, I have synonyms. All of these hyperlink to other sections in the Hebrew English Dictionary. There's a concordance of primary locations where this word is used. And then I get a grammatical description of how this word is used in various contexts. Now, if you have other Hebrew lexicons in your Accordance Bible Software Library, such as the Brown Driver Briggs, Dictionary of Classical Hebrew, Hebrew and Aramaic Lexicon of the Old Testament, Strong's, Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, and Theological Wordbook of the Old Testament. You can click on any of these hyperlinks to open these other dictionaries right here in Accordance. I should really point out some of the useful information in the appendices of the Hebrew English Dictionary. such as explanation of verb stems, mood, tense, and person, gender, and number, a discussion of how the Old Testament came to us, discussion of manuscripts, such as the Masoretic text, the major codices, the Qumran manuscripts, the Targums, and the Septuagint. At the end of the commentary on the Psalms, there are appendices. There's an explanation of grammar, verb stems, mood, tense, and so on. A verb identification chart, grammatical abbreviations, translations of the various versions that are used within the commentary. You see the full list right here. A listing of the books of the Old and New Testament and the Apocrypha. A discussion of how the Old Testament came to us. A discussion of manuscripts, the Masoretic text, vowel pointing of Yahweh, and so forth. And then at the very end there's a bibliography of sources used and sources for further research. Here are a few features of the New Testament Study Bible, using the Gospels volume as an example. In the introduction, we see some of the standard features that we saw in the Old Testament Study Bible, such as features and overview, discussion of how the commentary works, and so forth. But then we find a section on how the New Testament came to us, the manuscripts, the papyri, the majuscules, the minuscules, lectionaries and church fathers, major Greek text, Byzantine text, Egyptian text, and so forth. In the volume on the Gospel of Matthew, there's discussion on the genealogy of Christ and the virgin birth and the wise men from the east, Bethlehem to Nazareth, the baptism of John, discussions of the kingdom, and everything that you would want in a resource called the Complete Biblical Library. And notice that this is all before we even get to the commentary section. In the commentary itself, we see the same comparison of other translations as we did with the Old Testament Study Bible. Full disclosure here, for whatever reason, the editors of the Complete Biblical Library did not include the numbering and quick links to the Greek English dictionary in their New Testament Study Bible. But if you don't mind doing it yourself, here's a quick way to look up any of the words that are transliterated. So for instance, in Matthew 5:3, if we want to look up makarioi, the Greek word used for blessed, all we have to do is copy this word, switch over to our Greek English dictionary, change our search field from Greek entry, switch to transliterated entry, or in this example, transliterated content, paste in our word, we see it in the word list, we can hit enter or just select it right here, and then hit the enter key, and we find it right here. I can go up to the top of this entry to see Makarios. Notice that in the CBL Greek English Dictionary, we have the entry in the Greek as well as a transliteration, form of speech, a definition of how it's often translated, a Strong's number entry. You see that in the instant details, it's showing me a preview of the Greek Strong's Dictionary. It shows synonyms with hyperlinks to the Greek English Dictionary. Shows me how the word is used in the Septuagint, various grammatical forms. I get a concordance, like we had in the Hebrew English Dictionary. There's a discussion of classical Greek usage of the word, as well as Septuagint usage and then New Testament usage. And then my other lexicons are listed here, such as Strong's, BDAG, Moulton Milligan, which is not available in accordance yet, Kittle, Liddell Scott, the older New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology, and the newer New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis. The Complete Biblical Library is available as a combined bundle of Old and New Testament study Bibles with Hebrew and Greek dictionaries, or you can get just the Old Testament by itself and the New Testament by itself. And as mentioned earlier, there's a Greek grammar that will be added to the New Testament Study Bible with Greek English Dictionary at no extra charge.